So here is the spine done. You can see that it looks pretty good. I mean, it isn't perfect, but everything went on pretty well. There are some seams I can touch up, maybe with some strips of paper. Might just leave it alone. We'll see. So it depends what I feel about it. Here is the rudder and fin, which I carefully folded in the middle and not creased it. But then there's a little tab there and on the tippy top of the tip of the fin. And those are going to provide you with a gluing surface and kind of spread those pieces apart a little bit. And as per usual, first things first, get rid of that silver plating. Because again, all that's going to do is make it so your glue won't stick. Maybe other glues would, I don't know, but the glue I'm using won't stick well. It'll start to stick, but then it sloughs off. So first thing I do here is get a little bit of glue on the edges where they're going to come in contact. I looked at the directions, quote unquote, just that exploded drawing, very small drawing with all the parts shoved in there. And there's a spar in this that helps give it shape, I think. And as best I can tell, I made it in a certain way and it seemed to work. It didn't work when I tried to do the same thing on the stabilizers, but we'll talk about that later. So all you do here is butt these up against one another, make sure they're even. It's more imperative on this than in some other models, like the Migport, for instance, because the Migport I can find paints and things that will give you a good color match. If you mess this up, trying to get the aluminum to match is going to be very difficult indeed, because of the texture or lack thereof. It's really nicely done. Making sure all these pieces are nice and tight and the edges are good. And then what you're going to do is get a little shape involved when we add this little spar. So this is this funny looking spar. Now when I look on the plans, I see that. That is a part that I cut out and I put it on in 1/16 sheet balsa, but I'm not sure how it's supposed to go. So I bent it and glued it with some super glue and some zip kicker. It's just something to give it some shape and to give it a way to stick onto the spine of the fuselage. So, and there is a hole there. After playing around, I realized that panel line there lines up, and the front tip, leading edge, is just barely at one of the junctures of the little spine there. And you can see when I insert the spar, I'm just kind of testing it. It kind of goes along that line by my thumb, diagonally up the fin. At least I think that's where it's supposed to go. This is kind of offline blind, but I figure it's gonna be good enough. I mean, in the old days, I would just sort of butt joint these things onto the body, and I actually tried doing that on the stabilizer because I can't figure out how the spar goes on the stabilizer, and I met with abject failure on that. But we'll see. So I put some glue on this thing so that it will stick to either side on the inside of the fin. And I slide it in and I just make sure that it goes basically along that line right through the Polish checkerboard there. So that, again, when I squeeze it closed, the fin does not go flat. You want it to have a little bit of a shape to it. It's supposed to look like it's got something. These are all very knife edge things. They are really clean and tight, much more than the stuff I'm used to. But it also still has a little bit of a shape. So I think that's what that's for. So I'm just going around making sure everything is squished up and ready to go. And there's my hole. And I figure, okay, here goes. Put that in the center there. And that should give me a vertical piece that holds on. It seems to, at least give me a purchase. Because again, I'm going to be gluing. It's kind of hard to tell where I'm going to actually glue. And so I probably should have traced around where it was going to touch the spine and scrape that off. Would have been a better idea, but I didn't do that. I added glue where I thought it should go. And then I threw the fin on the ground. And then I put it back in and just got rid of some of the glue and made sure that the fin was on the center line of the spine. You can't see what's happening, but don't worry. It's just sort of making sure, trying to make sure that everything is straight, basically, um, and cleaning up little glue problems like that. Again, on typical things, like on the Newport, a little glue doesn't matter. On this thing, it does matter. I have found that some spit or some water on a brush, you get a lot of that stuff off, but you also want it to look pretty good. But there's the fin basically on. It looks pretty good. Now, you can see I have a stabilizer on, which worked. There's a hole there, and there is another one of these spar dealies, which, based on the plans, looks well. It's a piece I cut out here, but it's just one of these pieces here. That piece right there, cut out. And from the looks of it, it goes through the center of the fuselage and then bends back and attaches into stabilizers. And I could not, for the life of me, make that work. See here, see that? There, you can see that middle piece. That's this little spar, I think. I mean, as best I can tell, that's this piece, 20 whatever A, comes up like this and over and down. And man, I could not, I couldn't make that work. I, I'm not sure. Probably should have just modified it. So I decided to butt join this because I've done it before and it worked on the other side. I also noticed that the top and the bottom of the stabilizer, it's a full flying elevator basically, but I had to cut off a component of it in order to make it be flush. Otherwise, it was not flush against the fuselage in the rear there. Even though it is rounded in section, at that point it's pretty flat because of there's not that much actually touching everything. So first thing I did was glue the edges like I've done before, and then I decided I could just put that right on like that, which is what I did to the other side, and then shored it up with super glue. Went through and pulled off the aluminum like usual. Everything's going fine at this point and blissfully going along. Because what I do is I usually do a side of something on my own, and then it works, and then I do my video so I can show you how it works. I should do one time just go in cold. It would be a hilarious video. But so I put my glue along there, making sure I got a fair amount because I can use it to kind of fill a gap later and things like that. So that's not so horrible. And I'm just going to put this on here, and this should work. But man, my troubles began here. On this side, I don't know why, I could not get it flush. It would not stay. I was squeezing them closed a little bit so they'd be tight, and I was hoping it would stick in glue. And everything I did, that darn thing just would not hold. It would just fall off every time. So I went back and I cut a little bit off of the underneath side because it seemed like there was a big gap on the top. So I figured if I cut off more on the bottom, that would pull that in further. Or which way was it? Yeah, so that it would go. Actually, that is backwards. Maybe that was my problem. Anyway, at this point, all I'm trying to do is trim it on either side to try to make it be flush against the fuselage side. And everything I did just made it worse. And I was really in a world of hurt here. And there's no, I mean, you could copy this and print it and use it, and it'd be okay. But there is no other, you can't get a new piece because this stuff has that aluminum finish on it. This is it. You can't. So at this point, I'm kind of wondering, uh-oh. So I'm testing this to make sure. Oh, look, there's Mochi again. Oh, silly cat. Go away. My son came over and pulled him up there. He thought that was funny. He makes fun of the old man when I'm doing videos. So I'm trying to basically see if it's flush, and if it's flush, when I look at it from the rear, is it horizontal? Is it perpendicular to the fin? That's really what I'm checking there. You can't see. So, and it turns out it kind of was, kind of wasn't, and it was things weren't going well. I'll just say that. I kept putting it on and then testing it, and I could not get a good flush thing. and I was kind of at a loss. So I decided to try again, and I've trimmed it. I've done a lot of things to make sure it fits supposedly. Um, and I'm going to try it one more time. Now it's actually kind of flush. I'm checking again. I can't show you that. But I'm checking to see it looks pretty good. I'm satisfied with it. Now I'm going to do, instead of putting glue on that piece, I'm going to try to put just glue along there, thinking that when I push against, it will squish some of the glue up onto the joint, and I might be able to, things might go a little bit better here. And at this point, I'm shaving off little bits of this part, and I'm starting to lose it, and I'm getting glue on things, and you know, this was this was this was not this was almost a throwing the model against the wall thing, because it looks so dang easy. It's flat. Oh yeah, that's how I felt for the rest of the time here. It's flat. It's not nearly as complicated as anything else. It's just a slab of thin. I mean, how could it be so difficult? Um, but anyway, now I'm checking and I'm noticing that it isn't perpendicular. And when I make it perpendicular, it looks terrible. The gaps are there. So I just, at this point, took it apart. The other side worked, but took it apart and just was kind of at a loss. So what I finally decided to do, I probably should put, toothpicks in it like Neil does with his, but I'd put a piece of balsa in there that's shaped, that gives it airfoiled shape. This is how the wings go on, by the way, apparently. I put a piece of sandpaper tight against the fuselage, and then I sanded along on that part. So what that did was give me the right curve on that piece of balsa, so that it should fit and give me a pretty flush joint. And so by doing that and doing some extra sanding and playing around a little bit, I finally got to the point where I think it's gonna fit. Here I'm taking a little bit more off of this lower half, because right now when I put it against the body and look at it from the tail, it's sort of a V. It's got dihedral in it a little bit, and I'm trying to get rid of that dihedral. So I'm trying to pull that down so that it'll be flat and, again, perpendicular. I want to be able to push it up against the fuselage and glue it, and then be able to and know that as long as I have it in the place where it's supposed to glue, know that it is actually perpendicular. At least, yeah, in theory, that's what we're going to do. So I think here I got some glue on there, and I go ahead and put it against. Again, everything's been scraped, and I'm holding it in place, trying to make sure that it's catching there. Now it's holding better. It's not falling over on itself. I'm checking it for square with the Mark 1 eyeball. I think it's passable. I'm noticing it's not falling apart because it's actually got some purchase. There's a footprint in there where the glue is attaching. So then I went and I gave it a little shot of super glue, zip kicked it, and she's done. So that thing is finally on, but oh man alive, did I foul it up. You can see all the glue smears, and oof to me. It's not good. So hopefully the wings go better. So I went back to my lovely Migport. Ah, the Migport. Here are the tail parts that are cut out for it. All the skins, and then there's the interior pieces that are the skeletons that are solid. They do have places for hinges. I don't use the hinges on these. I just glue things directly to each other. Maybe put tabs on there. I'm sanding the edges, not the leading edge, but I'm sanding all the other edges of the interior balsa, because I want to make sure the paper comes together pretty close. So I took the time to sand all these and give them sort of rounded or very low sloping edges on them, just so that, again, it's going to be nice, and the paper, when you put the skin on, will cover nicely. So take the time to do that, and it also won't look so chunky in the back. It's supposed to be pretty fine and pretty, very delicate and feminine. So once I did that, I put all the skins on. The skins look good. They fit beautifully. Did a little sanding here and there. I have to color the edges, but that's not a big deal. And then I left this one off to show you. This one is the stabilizer. You notice it has the holes cut out for it and the corresponding holes in the balsa inside. That is so we can put our elevator control cables through there, which on the real airplane, that's what it did. So all I do, and this, I'm showing you this one because this is how I did all of them, put a little glue down on the skin, smear it around, make a thin layer with my finger, and then put it in place. Generally, the hinge line is supposed to be flat, so I could line it up on the hinge lines first, and then go back and make sure it fits around the edges. In this case, what I lined up were the holes, because those slots have to be open. And again, this is a computer designed model, and it should be sharp, should be good. And sure enough, when you put these on there, you get a nice opening, and it looks just fine. So now I just make sure that I've got good contact and that my glue is hitting the edges and the tips here, so that I can have a good overall situation. And once that's pretty good, then I put glue on the other side and do the same thing. And either on the skeleton or on the sheet, on the inner skin, doesn't matter. But smear it around again. You don't want to have blobs in there that dry and give you lumps and little bits of little Schlieren lines and things. You want it to just be nice and smooth. And then I have test fit this, of course, to fold it over to make sure things do match. That's an important thing to do. And I know from doing it multiple times that it should match close, very close. And I'm looking and I'm pleased. There's a smile on my face because those slots are matching up admirably. And then I start squeezing on the edges to bring them close together, making sure that the whole length is good and solid and flat, because it can make little pillows in the middle. It can have little burbles. And that's what I'm doing there, flattening things out, making sure things are good. And there's the stabilizer. And it's so much easier than the silly MiG. There I'm making sure I get glue out of there because there was some glue on the inside, because that is where my control wires are going to go for the elevators. Now, one thing I didn't do on this, which I probably should have, is put the control horns on the movable surfaces. I didn't do that yet. I'm going to do that after they're connected, which is kind of dumb. I should have done it now. That would have been the next step. And some of those edges, like at the leading edge on the tip, there's a little bit of paper that's kind of pushed out. I just take sandpaper and just roll it around kind of to smooth those edges. That's pretty typical of what happens, at least in my hands. So I do that and then recolor things. I'm good. I recolored these with markers, by the way, and I should have used some paint because it wasn't such a good idea. I test fit this, though. I did cut that part, by the way, down in the back. Remember how it was long and it was high? I cut them all down looking at pictures of the Migport. And I don't know why they were long and why it was high. So I cut them down, and it seems to look like a Migport if I do that. So I go ahead and put this in. I've test fit it. I've made sure that when I look at it, again, it's perpendicular. It's going to give me you want to make sure it's straight. You don't want it to be at a diagonal angle. And then when you look at it from the tail, which is what I'm doing here, or look at it from the front, I'm making sure it's lining up with the reference of where the wings are going to be, for example, because otherwise it'll look really bad if it's crooked. So you just got to take your time. Normal people would put it in a jig of some kind. I don't. Now in the back, there's an extra piece I didn't notice I had. It's a little tiny piece with little folds you can see that fold under themselves, and those are glue joints. And that fits right on top of the elevator, of the stabilizer, I'm sorry. And I didn't know such a thing existed. I don't know if it's really supposed to be there. Fits nicely, though, so I go ahead and put it in. Because it fits up against that vertical piece of wood in the very back where my index finger is. And you should have snapped it in place. And it finishes it off nicely. I just don't know if the Migport is supposed to have that back there, or if it was just flat. I have to look at a picture of the Migport and see. But I used it because that way, when you put on the rudder, it looks better too. So the next thing is to put on these pieces. So I just glue them on. In the kit, they have places for hinges. I gotta look in the cockpit and see, where do I have my rudder pedals? In this case, I have my rudders giving myself right rudder. So when you glue on your control surfaces, you got to make sure you match with whatever your controls are doing in the cockpit. So in my case, the little right rudder is in order, and there you go. And you can see that actually is pretty thick. That should be much thinner. Oofta. If I do it again, I should make a whole new. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll make a whole new rudder because that's really thick. Anyway, there it is, offset on purpose. And then I got to do something with the elevators. The elevators are going to droop because when I look in the cockpit, I can see my joystick down there. I don't know if you can or not. I'm trying to show you with the light. But anyway, there's a joystick in there, and it's pointed forward just a little. So that suggests that the elevators are down. And when you look at pictures of this airplane, the elevators tended to droop quite often. When the pilot got out, pushed the stick forward, or maybe it's just weight, I don't know. But put some glue on there and go ahead and slide this in. Make sure the edge, the tip on the outside edge is where it's supposed to be. And then just glue it and hold it. And that stuff glues very well. And a little bit of a seam is okay because it's a hinge line. I might look and see if I should put a couple of like hinge overlays on there. But there it is, drooped a bit, and it's actually drooped more than you can see. It's more like that. That looks a little better. You don't want to touch the ground in the back, but it was drooped down quite a bit. And then I just go ahead and put the other one on, same way. Glue, attach it, and this one when I put it on kind of, it's not lined up. So I have to go back and make sure I get it lined up just so, and pull it down and make sure that it is, it has the same droop. You don't want them to be drooped different angles because that would look silly because they were connected in the middle in the real airplane. And so once you do that, oh, that's a little piece of glue that's dried. You can pull off. Then you got your elevators on there. So there are the tails for the Newport, just like we got the tails for the MiG. So there they are. Looks pretty good. I don't know if I'll redo the fin, the rudder, or not. It's what they call for in the plan to the thickness, but I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, man, it should be probably half that thick in real life, unless the light just looks funny. Now these controls are, oh yeah, I'm going to put on the skid, but those controls are going to be connected to control horns. You can see where they're going to go right there. And the elevator ones go through those holes in the stabilizer. So all I got to do is grab one of these, like the upper one, and the upper one should easily, at least in theory, you grab it, and when it comes time, you just fish it through the elevator and the hole in the elevator and that slot, pull it up, and then right there is where there's going to be a horn, and that'll look really nice. So it's going to be slick.